So in today's web dev tip, we're going to make a start on our web front end. And in yesterday's tip, we took a look at how to come up with the design. So if you're creative, you might be able to come up with your own, but I've just stolen a sketch resource and I'm going to use that as a basis for the web interface that we're going to generate. So in this tutorial, we're just going to make a start. We're going to get the hero image in there, and I'm going to show you a couple of little tricks that I like to use if you're working with images that you don't have much control over. So we're just going to get the background image in place and sorted for this tutorial, but we will look at some responsiveness for mobile as well. So let's get started by taking a look at what we've got in our index page at the moment. So everything's pretty standard, and we've just got our H1 that we added and also this web component. So I'm just going to remove those now because we don't really want those in our template. And I've found a Rick Astley image, so from one of his most popular music videos. So we've got a lot of detail in the background, but we've also got the prominent image of Rick as well. So we're going to put this as our hero image. And just to show you, just before we crack on, I've actually downloaded the sketch resource. So we're going to be replacing this background image of the old gentleman here with the picture of Rick Astley. There's not a lot we can really take from the rest of the template, but maybe we'll take some of this design later on as well when we start working on other sections of the site. So in today's tutorial, we're just going to focus on this section here and mainly on the background image and just getting that to work nicely on both desktop and mobile. So once we've got that sorted, we can just fill in the rest of the blanks with the rest of the detail, which we'll do in tomorrow's tutorial. So we've got the image. Let's actually start adding that into the HTML, but we're not going to add that in as an image tag as you might expect. We're going to add this in as a background image because we want to layer stuff on top of it, obviously. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new element on the page, and I'm going to give this a class so we can target it in our SCSS, and we'll say it's a section, and I'm going to use the BEM methodology just to kind of name our classes. So it's a section, and we're going to give it a modifier of hero, so it's of type section, but it's also going to just represent the hero section at the top of the page. And in thinking about it, probably div is not the right choice of element there. We could probably use section, which is a bit more semantically correct. But there's going to be no content in there at the moment, but we want to actually display the hero image. So we do that by adding it into our style sheet. So don't forget we're using SCSS here, so we can use things like functions and nesting and so forth like that. But it should be pretty simple just for today's setup. So one thing I'm just going to do as a global thing here is just set the box sizing to border box. So that just helps with layout in terms of padding. So padding is taken into account of the overall size. So if you're wondering if you've seen that before, that's what that does, and it's useful to get that set up straight away so you get everything appearing as you would expect it to. But if you obviously don't have to use that, you can use some other type of box sizing if you like. So we're going to target our section. So we're going to say for a section, and if we've got a section class in here, we then want to target the modifier of hero as well. So that's the SCSS nesting, enabling us to nest CSS rules like this. So you wouldn't normally be able to do this in a style sheet, and this will get transpiled down to standard CSS as well, but it should just make our life a little bit easier to keep everything grouped together when we add more sections later on. So what are we going to do in this hero section? Well, we want to get the image in there first of all. So we'll say background image. And if you are using Visual Studio Code within the NX setup, you can see that it will give you some autocomplete help here as well. So we can say the file that we want to use is inside of our assets folder that you can see over here. And it's given us the file name as well, so we can just select that, which is handy. So VS Code giving us a bit of help there just to get the right image path. So if we save that now, you should see that the server's reloaded. And if we just go and find our Rick and Roll web page, the image is actually there, but you can't see it because if we have a look at the elements on the page, that section has actually got no height. It's spreading across the width of the page, but it's just got no height value. So that'll be the other thing that we want to give it, is a hard-coded specific height. So if we say 600 pixels, for example, oh, it's still not displaying, so I wonder why that is. So it still doesn't seem to be picking up that height rule, so let's have a look. Okay, so in the nesting here, I've got an additional period. So that's not an additional class, it's actually a modifier to the section class that we've added. So if we just remove that period there, we should find that now the background image is displaying. So a few things here, we don't really want it to repeat, so we could specifically take that out and say background repeat is no repeat. So that will stop that from happening. But we wanted to obviously spread the width of the page as well. So to do that, we can say the background size when we use cover, and that will just stretch the background image across the width that's available to us, and it will constrain it within the height that we've got there. So that's the kind of thing that we're going for. We just want the image to stretch the page as a background image where we can layer stuff on top. So I mentioned earlier on about the responsiveness of the page, and if we just go into Chrome's mobile view, you can see, although we'd still get the background image appearing as we would like it, kind of stretched across the page, it's not great because we can't actually see Rick Astley on there. We've just got some background texture. So we'll add in a media rule, a media query to handle that. And I'll just stick that down here. So we'll say at media screen and max size, so we could probably go something like say 400 pixels. So if the maximum viewable size on the user's device is 400 pixels, we're going to use any rules inside of here, and we could just copy this nesting here as well. Again, we can use our SCSS nesting rules in here. Let's just close the braces up there, and one more. So what we're going to do when we're in this situation is we're just going to shift the position of the image over to the left. So we can do that by setting the background position, and we've got the option of setting the X and Y position. Obviously we want to move it along the X axis, and if we just say, we can use a literal value if we want, like a pixel value if we need to, but we can actually use a percentage as well because we don't really know what the size of the user screen is. So if we just say the background position X is 50%, it will just shift it along the X axis to the left in our case, so we can see that picture of Rick. And also just checking the rules, not actually size there, it should be width. So size is a bit vague, isn't it? So width is the width of the screen that we're using. So if you save that and go back over to the page, you can see now the picture of Rick has been moved over to the left hand side. So this will be the mobile view. You can see there it's appearing, and it will be what we're looking for our mobile responsive view. So one last thing before we finish up, this image is quite bright. So if we were to put some white text on it, for example, it's just going to get lost in it, and the black text might not stand out quite as we would like because it's not that light an image. So you might end up in this situation where you don't have much control of the image that's being presented on the page. Because one solution to this would be send it to an image editor such as Photoshop and apply some filters to darken or lighten the image depending on what you need to do. But we can do that with a little CSS trick which I like to use because you might end up in this situation where your images are coming from an API or user uploaded and you just need to darken them for some reason. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to add a CSS rule to darken this image. So the way we do that is up here where we're adding the background image. So you can actually layer multiple images on top of each other here. So if we had, for example, a transparent PNG that had like a dark faded background on it, we could layer that on top and it would darken the overall image. But we can actually create our own using the linear gradient CSS function. So if we create a linear gradient here and just put a comma before the next image, that will actually layer the gradient on top of the first image. So what we need to use for a linear gradient, we just pass in two values from the start and the two color. So we're going to use the same color here to get the same. We're not really creating a gradient, we're just creating a block of color. So we say RGBA 00008, and then we just copy the same value across here as well. So if we save that and go back to the page, you can see the image has been darkened, and if we have a look at it on the desktop view as well, we can see that gradient's been applied, and you can still see the image underneath, but we just darkened the overall image in general so that we can put some nice white text on top. And that might be a little bit dark, we'll go for 0.7 maybe. And that's still fairly dark, and we can still put the white text on, but we can see a bit more of the background image in there. So that's it for this tutorial. We've gone through a few different things. We've got our image in there, we've got our mobile responsive view set up as well for the background image, and we've also put in a filter just to darken the image, so the content we're going to put on in the next few lessons will be able to stand out a bit more. That's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.